Now, whistleblowers say they suffer great prejudice when they stand up against corruption. The Whistleblowers for Change group, including whistleblowers from the state capture inquiry, the National Lotteries Commission, as well as Parliament, are sharing their response to Part 1 of the Zondo Commission report. Reporter Masego Rahlaga has been following the story and joins us live. Good afternoon, Masego. What are the whistleblowers saying about their lives being at stake?
Well, Mfundo, you can imagine, the ultimate punishment that whistleblowers have received, as we've seen with Babita Deokaran, who was working for the Gauteng Health Department and had actually, blown the whistle on PPE corruption in the province of Gauteng. She was unfortunately murdered after dropping off her child at school. So those are some of the things that the whistleblowers here have described, in fact, even remembering Babita Deokaran and saying that, she wasn't supposed to actually be killed, especially in the manner in which she did. But of course, they described, especially in local government, we know that a lot of the corruption that has been exposed by the media and whistleblowers and other people is mostly in local government. And what they're saying is that some of them would go to jail for trumped-up charges, or they'd be taken to HR for disciplinary hearings, and then the charges that are presented to them during those disciplinary hearings don't make any sense. And it's obviously something that the company or whoever is overreaching, whether it be an executive in the board or an official in government, is overreaching and making sure that that person who is telling the truth about corruption in that particular department or company is gotten rid of. But here is one of the whistleblowers explaining exactly what it is that they've had to witness in terms of people who do try to blow the lid on corruption and what they go through.
At local government level, whistleblowers have faced arrest on trumped-up charges and attempted assassinations. Others have had to flee the country or move around in secret to safe houses in fear of their lives. In other cases, they have resulted in financial loss to private sector entities, such as retirement funds, and or to individuals, including employees of public and or private sector bodies, members and beneficiaries of retirement funds and others.
No, they must certainly go through the most difficult time. And what would they like to see happen because of this?
Well, Mfundo, of course, you can imagine how scared a person is when they do become a whistleblower. I mean, it goes from being victimized to, as you heard there from Cynthia, having to go to jail for trumped-up charges. And this, of course, goes back to our law enforcement agencies as well, police officers, National Prosecuting Authority, which the Whistleblowers for Change group says it's been in communication with some of those law organizations to try and get them to please side with whistleblowers. But in terms of what they're thinking should happen, it's going to be a mammoth task, especially if you look at the fact that in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry report Part 1 that was handed over to President Cyril Ramaphosa last week, Zondo, the acting Chief Justice, also says that he believes that there should be monetary rewarding to whistleblowers. This, of course, to also motivate them to blow the whistle on corruption, but also, the monetary award for whistleblowers who basically lost their livelihoods because of the fact that they are victimized every time they try and blow the lid on corruption. But of course, there was also a warning that even though the whistleblowers support this recommendation by the Chief Justice, they're also saying that just because you'll be awarded or rewarded for blowing the whistle, it doesn't mean that you should use this as some sort of business enterprise. It should be something that is done by the agency, the anti-corruption agency that is recommended by Zondo. And that agency needs to make sure that whatever the whistleblower is coming forward with is actually factual, and that it actually leads to, someone being arrested or money that is owned by the state to be brought back to the state, etc. But here is one of the whistleblowers talking about, monetary compensation, especially for those who go through, basically, for a lack of a better word, Nomfundo, I would say, hell after blowing the whistle on corruption. But also, a family like Babita Diokoran's family, should they not be compensated for her dying? Especially if it's proven that she died because of the fact that she was, exposing corruption within government. But here is one of the whistleblowers explaining exactly what it is that they think they deserve every time they blow the whistle.
We hereby call for fundamental reforms to the Protected Disclosures Act to introduce the need to compensate whistleblowers for the harm done to them, such as loss of livelihoods, income, life savings and pensions, reputations, etc. To introduce an expanded list of persons to whom a whistleblower contemplating making protected disclosures may go. Persons to whom such disclosures are made must be given the legal obligation to ensure confidentiality and adequate protection against harm for the whistleblower.
I must say, Masego, that insofar as this of incentivizing the whistleblowers, it is a noble suggestion, but one that could possibly also leave the system very exposed because people might bring forward false claims. So it's one that will have to be ventilated and debated from all angles, but most certainly is something where it must be considered because these people do lose their livelihoods. But what would they like to see beyond this? What are others saying should in fact happen?
Well, Nomfundo, we all know that corruption doesn't only happen in the public sector, it also happens in the private sector. A very clear example would be Bell Pottinger, for instance, that PR company in overseas that was found wanting in terms of former President Jacob Zuma and what he was doing with many other companies in terms of tenders. But also there's, for instance, your Busasa, Angelo Agrizi, exposing some of the corruption that would happen at Busasa in terms of deals with the Correctional Services Department, giving ministers such as former Minister Nomvula Mokonyane money in or rather Louis Vuitton bags. So, corruption doesn't only happen in government. In fact, the private sector is seen to be an enabler. And therefore, the whistleblowers that we spoke to here today and that spoke to us today say that they believe that the JSE, as a body that is supposed to look at, illegal activity, etc., by the private sector, should also have what is recommended in the Zondo report, Part 1, where he says that anti-corruption organization or unit should be established to make sure that corruption does not actually come into the state in the form or in this huge stage that it did in the form of state capture. So they're saying that they believe that there should be a whistleblower office and an anti-corruption office at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as well, so that they could also make sure that they are monitoring what's happening in the private sector, the money that goes in and out and that exchanges hands, whether it be between private companies themselves or private and public sector. So here is Thandeka Qubule talking specifically about that.
We believe that the JSE is an important institution in our economy. We believe that it can set the tone and culture of South African business, especially with regards to corrupt practices in the private sector. What the JSE does would be instructive beyond the listed sector. We believe an office of the whistleblower JSE should be established and popularized to help channel information to and from whistleblowers who know of possible securities law violation. This can be among a powerful weapon in the law enforcement arsenal against white-collar crime. Through their knowledge of the circumstances and individuals involved, whistleblowers can help the anti-corruption agency identify possible fraud and other violations much earlier than might otherwise have been possible. This would also minimize the harm to investors, better preserve the integrity of South African capital markets, and more swiftly hold accountable those responsible for unlawful conduct.
Oh, all right. No, Masego, thank you very much for that. That was our reporter, Masego Rahlaga.